Welcome to the tutorial Cleaning Parts and Setting the Pivots. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to clean up the individual body parts that you cut up so that they're complete, independent, drawn objects. So for this tutorial, you're going to use your entire arsenal of drawing tools, so the paint tool, eraser, paintbrush, contour editor, select tool, the cutter. You'll be using lots of things in the drawing menu to optimize, show strokes, the light table, all sorts of things like that. Anything you need to do to clean up those body parts. I don't know exactly how I'm going to edit this video, if I'm going to speed up certain parts or just edit them out, because to watch me clean up all the parts again and again for 3 views is pretty repetitive, but it does in fact take a long time. So what I'm going to do is at least do the first one with you and probably highlight anything that's a little bit different to clean up or cut out. So let's begin with the rabbit ears. So we'll start with this one here in the front view. It's number 1 in the front view. You can even go to the drawing view so that you can see the objects individually, like that, as you're cleaning up, or like you can hide, show and hide in the camera view, so it's really up to you. So I'm just going to zoom in here. And so this is one of the easier ones to clean up, because really you're really just going to add a little bit of a nub here at the end, so that if you ever need to rotate the ear back and forth, it'll have enough stretch on both sides as not to show this clean cut or gap. And it looks like there's a few extra little dots and whatnot here as well. So I'm just going to use the contour editor to get rid of some of these. Like, I think this thin black line is from the line that defines the top of the head curve. She'll probably get rid of that. It's considered a separate object. So I'm going to ungroup those. Often when you can't select something by itself, it's because it's grouped, so it's a good little trick to know. So I'm just going to delete this. And then what I want to do next is extend this line in a very natural way, as well as the center line, so that if it ever peeks out behind the head, it'll continue in a very natural way. So I'm going to do that by using the paint tool, but you can actually use, you could also use the contour editor tool to pull those points out and merge them together. You can do it in a bunch of different ways. So I'm going to flatten it and then use the contour editor to, oh, I don't think it flattened properly. I'm not sure if I'm using the same black. It's probably why. I should use the black from the rabbit palette. So if I select this and I make sure it's this black, this should now flatten. And there we go, so it's flattened. And then use the contour editor to kind of clean some of this stuff up. I'm going to fill in the rest of the pink. Oops. And actually I should finish this line as well. Like that. I'm going to select the whole thing. So it's Option Shift F if I want to use the keyboard shortcut. And you can see there's still a line there. So it's not completely optimized to get rid of the extra strokes. You can also go to Drawing, Optimize, remove extra strokes. So it got rid of that extra line as well. I'd like this to taper a bit. It's not bad. I still find this a bit thick here. And this is a bit thick as well. So that's not bad. So now if we unhide everything again, the ear is in fact in front of the head, if I remember correctly. So what you would have to do is actually start reordering parts of your timeline. So the ears right now are really above the head, but they really should be behind the head. So let's find the head and move that up a bit. Or actually, let's move the ears down because we want to still keep all the eyes and things like that in front of the head. So now it sits behind the head. But you can see if I now needed to move this, let's say with the transform tool, just this one, I could do it just like this. Okay, you know what you're seeing back here? Let's just undo this. What you're seeing there was the rabbit color model. So it's actually really important to lock and hide the rabbit color model because it can deceive you. It can make you believe that a gap is closed when it isn't. So you have to be really careful to lock and hide that. So now that that's done, let's go back to the ear. And let's try rotating it again. So as I rotate here, you can see that if I hadn't elongated it, you would see a gray triangle here, you'd see a gap. But because there's more of the ear that extends beyond, you can stretch it in either direction. There's a little bit of give. And it looks quite natural, which is good. And just to warn you as a caution, even though I just used the transform tool here, never, never, never use the transform tool when you're doing anything in terms of setting up. When you're setting up your character, you're cutting it out, you're drawing, don't use the transform tool at all. Don't use any of the tools below this line here because they are all for animating. And if you noticed, a black keyframe appeared before I undid my last two actions, which means that anything I did was not permanent. It was just recorded in a keyframe, and that could really mess you up while animating. So let's move on to the eyes now. I'm going to do at least one of the eyes, once again, just because they are so difficult to work with. So I'm going to bring up the drawing view here. And then I'm going to look for the eye. So let's take a look at the eye here, or what I've labeled the eyelid. So it looks like it's pretty smooth, it's not too bad around, but if we use the contour editor and select it, we can see that there's like a million points around the edge. So just to be professional and to actually make the file size a bit lighter, it's a better idea to smooth out and get rid of all these points around the edge of this rough cut. And the fastest way to do that is by using the smooth editor. I don't know if you remember this from one of the previous tutorials, but actually because this is yellow, I might change this color to something a bit more visible. You just have to take the tool and go over the points and it automatically smooths them out like that. So it's really, really fast and easy to use. And then you can just use the contour editor to clean up any extraneous points and to kind of fix up the curve a bit. So something like that's not bad. There are far fewer points and you get a nice clean, pretty round contour. And if we go into the camera view, we can see that the center is also hollow, indicated by the gray here, which is exactly what we want. So let's move on to the eyeball. This one I might have to do in the camera view just because I like the gray background. Obviously you can actually change the color of the drawing view in your preferences and make it gray, but just to be quick and not have to fuss around too much, I'm going to fill in the center part here. One thing I noticed here is why my colors are jumping around is because I didn't lock them. So if I link them, now if I select one, it doesn't matter which one of these are selected, they'll all go to the color swatch that I select. So, eyeball. And we're going to do what we did before. We want to get rid of that line, so we're going to try to optimize or get rid of extra strokes. So drawing, optimize, optimize. So if that didn't work, we go to drawing, optimize, remove extra strokes, which it did. So now you have a nice, clean, white, round eyeball. The last one is the pupil. So it has the outline and the center fill. It's because it's a central vector line. So it's up to you. You can leave it as it is. You can group it, or you can turn this into a brush stroke and then flatten it and keep it together, which I think I'm going to do. So I'm going to say drawing, convert pencil lines to brush strokes, and now the optimizing should work. And it's one solid shape. So in terms of reordering in the timeline, you really want this pupil to sit between the eyeball and the eyelid. So right now it's above, but let's just slide it below. And actually the eyeball, it's actually the eyelid that is on top of the two. So it's eyelid, pupil, eyeball. And that's because if you select the pupil and it's between the two, when you're going to animate later on, you can see that it'll pass behind. This looks like it's passing behind just the yellow because this is black as well, but let me zoom out. So now you can do something like that. You can pass the eyes between the two layers, which is what you really want to do so they can move around the head. So the next thing I'd like to do is clean up the face. So let's find the face in the timeline, or the head rather, over here. And I'm going to go to the drawing view for this. So the head looks something like this. In order to clean it up, we're most definitely going to need to see the mouth and the rest of it so we can understand where to follow behind. So this is a perfect body part to clean up in the drawing view because then you can make use of the light table like that. But before we do that, I just wanted to let you know, in case you were wondering whether the head should be connected to the neck or not, that it's actually up to the person doing the breakdown. Sometimes the neck is attached to the head, sometimes the neck is attached to the body, and sometimes the neck is on its own layer by itself. So in this case, I'm going to delete the neck and the shoulders because I'm going to put the neck on its own individual layer. So I'm going to turn the light table back on. And then I'm going to select the brush tool and the black outline. I'm going to rotate my drawing view a bit until I get comfortable. And then I'm going to try to make a curve that's going to follow almost like a chin behind the teeth. Like that. So that's not too bad. I'm just going to flatten it and then clean it up a little bit so that there's no disjunction here between the thicker and the thinner line. Option Shift F to flatten. And then I'm going to use the contour editor by using Option A. So something like that. And then I'm going to select the paint tool and then the skin color and then just fill in any of these holes. So like that. And then there's still the matter of flattening the lines. These extra contour lines. So we're going to go to Drawing, Optimize, Remove Extra Strokes. And so now we have a nice clean face. So the next thing I want to clean up is also the mouth, because the eyebrows and the nose are similar, so you're going to clean them up exactly like you see here. So neither the eyebrows, the nose, nor the mouth need this yellow outline around it. So if you select the cutter tool and you just select the yellow, it'll disappear, and that's because the cutter tool, when it's in the lasso mode, will delete anything or cut anything up to an intersection. So where the yellow meets the black is considered an intersection, so it deleted that very easily. It's the same with these little black lines and the yellow right there. And then if you notice before, there's a little bit of a chip that I'm just going to clean up quickly. I'm going to use the contour editor tool again. Actually, before I do that, I like to flatten all of the mouth because there's a bunch of strokes all over the place. Flatten it and then optimize it. And if the optimizing doesn't work, you can use Remove Extra Strokes, like that. The moment these overlap, they become a solid shape, which is what we're looking for. So something like that. Let's go to the camera view again. So there's one more body part that I'd like to show you how to clean up, and that's the arm. So let's look for the arm here in the timeline. And let's go to the drawing view to see it. So between the arm and the forearm, we really need to make a nice rounded joint. So we're going to do that by first cleaning up this junk around it. It might even be easier to see in the camera view with the gray background. Like that. So I'm going to use the cutter tool again and just cut these. Oh, it could be grouped again. Also, just select these individual pieces and delete them. So this one line is together, so I can't cut it away like I could with the cutter tool when they were separate strokes that hadn't been flattened yet. So this you can get rid of with the eraser. So let's try that. You can widen your brush because clearly this is not thick enough. Like that. You can use the contour editor just to make sure this line stays straight. Something like that. I'm going to use the drawing view and use the light table. I want to see what the forearm looks like behind it as well as the body. Okay. So it's up to you, but for me a natural shoulder would have a bit more of a rounder edge here. So I think I might pull up this line, or a rounder contour rather, and make the black line follow. As long as it rests beneath the thick black line of the collar, we should be okay. Like that. Maybe a bit thicker. And there we go. So the other part that we need to round is here, where it's going to rotate from the elbow, because otherwise, I don't know if you can imagine this, but if I rotate this forearm, there's going to be a pie-shaped or like a triangular-shaped cut where this forearm will hinge from the upper arm. So if we have two rounded pieces that overlap, when we do a rotation, it'll rotate smoothly along each other's contours, so you won't see that obvious gap. So the cleanest way to make two semicircular pieces is by using two halves of the same circle. So what we're going to do is select the ellipse tool, which is hidden behind the line tool. We're going to be sure that it has some type of a width. So I'll enter in a value of 10 and we'll try that out. We're going to select the black outline color so it'll have the same color as this black outline here. And then what I'm going to do is hold down Shift so that I'll make a perfectly proportional ellipse, in other words, a circle, and hold down the Alt or Option key to create that circle from the center point. Like that. So then I'm going to nudge my circle over a bit. I'm going to do a quick test. And I'm just going to make it a little smaller. So that's not bad. Then what I'm going to do is select the circle, use Command or Control on Windows C to copy it. Then I'm going to scroll down and select the forearm layer. Click anywhere in the camera view and use Command or Control V to paste, like that. So now what I'm going to do is go up to the drawing menu and select the menu item Arrange, Send to Back. And now I'm going to do something that I haven't done for any of the other body pieces. I'm going to set the pivot. And the reason that I'm setting the pivot now is because it's only really with the elbows and the knees that you really need a perfect circle such as this for the joints. And so we're going to take the opportunity because there's a really easy way to set the pivots if you have a perfect circle. So let's select the pivot tool. And as you can see here, because the circle was selected, a blue square with its center point is produced, and this center point is the dead center of this circle. So I'm just going to click on that point, and as you can see, that's where I've placed my pivot. I'm going to zoom in a bit and center it even better. That's actually not too bad, but you can move it around and center it so it's perfect. So I'm going to go back to the select tool, and then I'm going to turn this pencil line into a brush stroke. And you can actually do this by clicking on a button in the tool properties panel for the select tool. So if we scroll down here, it's this button right here, pencil to brush. And then what I'm going to do is scroll in my colors to find the color of the G. Switch my cursor to the paint tool, and then fill in this section here. Then I'm going to switch back to the select tool, select all my objects, and flatten them using another button in the tool properties panel. Okay, I see what's going on here. I believe this arm, yeah, that's it, hasn't been cleaned up yet, so that's why this flattening isn't happening. It's because this image right here is grouped. So I'm going to ungroup that by using Command-Shift-G, and then just quickly cleaning up this arm. Okay, let's try flattening again. And I'm just going to do my final cleanup. So I'm going to add an extra point here to, oh, there's one there that's not too bad then. Just to guard this curve, because if there's no point here and then you delete something, this whole curve will collapse. But we have a point, so we're okay. There we go. So I didn't mention this, but as I'm cleaning, I'm really trying to keep this outer curve exactly as it is. So as you're cleaning up around, it's important that you can change anything else you see here, but this outer curve you should try to keep as is, as it was, as that circle, because the moment you start fooling around with this curve, it's not going to be symmetrical with, or it's not going to be identical, which was the whole point of cutting and pasting it from that layer. So on that note, let's go back to the arm layer, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're not going to set the pivot point for this piece because the pivot actually doesn't go where the elbow is. It goes up by the shoulder. So we're going to set that pivot with all the other pivots in the rigging videos. So I'm going to send this to back. Then I'm going to turn it into a brush stroke. I'm going to fill in this section here. Then I'm going to flatten the whole thing. And then I'm finally just going to use the contour editor to clean up, taking care that I keep this outer contour exactly as is. Like that. So now let's take a look in the camera view. So this pivot, like you can see, is misplaced. But if we look at the forearm pivot, it's exactly where it should be. Okay, I see the problem here. The body is hiding what we really need to see. So as I grab this handle and I rotate, you can see that it's really rotating smoothly on the circumference of the circle beneath it. So you can never see, it never looks like it's not a perfect rotation, which is exactly what we're going for. So that's it for the tutorial, cleaning parts and setting the pivots. Stay tuned for the next tutorial, creating ghost drawings.